Alright guys, Hatchkarmic again today. Hope you're doing well and enjoying your day so far. Rostermania continued to kick off overnight with big rumours emerging, and it seems almost confirmed at this point that Slasher is gone from FaZe. They've not decided to extend his contract. That means they're looking for a move. What replacement are they going to bring in? Are they going to make a role change that's been hotly discussed over the last few days? And also Scrappy with a few words on Ghosty, basically saying that he does not want him anywhere near that Toronto lineup if Scrappy is to stay there next season. Very much enjoyed to hear your thoughts and comments. Hit the like button if you enjoy. Subscribe if you're new as always. So let's dive straight in. There's a lot going on at the moment, absolutely. And there will be a lot more happening later today per our understanding. Just quickly here, another tweet from Sib. Now, look, fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on me. So you're not fooling me again, Sib, because this is, I'm pretty sure, a J. Cole song. I've got to be more careful with these pros. But nonetheless, would he tweet a song title if there wasn't something going on? I don't know what's going on with Seattle, right? But we know that all of those guys are going to be unrestricted free agents. They will be officially free in just under a week's time at this point on 11:59 Pacific next Sunday, 2 weeks after the World Championship. That's when they'll officially be free agents and they can sign new deals. I don't know where Sib's going to go right now. There's been some talk about Thieves. There's been some talk about potentially that Minnesota Rocket team. If they partner with G2, they might try and take a more serious approach maybe than they have the last couple of years in terms of building a team that's actually intending to win championships. There's also this from Standy, unrestricted free agent. Now, Standy was going to be a UFA anyway. It's not like they dropped him. As Clay says, you know, get dropped, loser, because Standy clarifies that, you know, he's a UFA, but he's a UFA in the sense that his contract is at an end, right? And just this interaction here makes me wonder whether a Clay Standy reunion next year somewhere else could be a possibility. Also, we've got to talk London. They did not pick up their contracts on anyone. This isn't a massive surprise. They've done this before, and I do wonder if they will look at potentially bringing a guy like Nasty back if he doesn't get a better offer somewhere else. But Asim, UFA, Nasty, UFA, all of those guys are going to be unrestricted. They can look for new opportunities. I think Asim's an interesting one, right? Because he's a player that at the start of the season was getting a lot of traction and towards the ends was super anonymous. So I think that Asim should still be on the radar of some other squads, but his stock has definitely taken a bit of a nosedive, I think, towards the end of this season. Nasty hopefully is in a good position to go again, and maybe London will run it back with him. Maybe London are going to move to Charlotte and they're going to go in an entirely new direction, or they're going to do like a mix of British and Spanish players because they've got the Spanish KOI guys funding that organization now. Also, Los Angeles Guerrillas, they confirm what is effectively a complete squad wipe apart from the players they have under contract. So all the players they had options on this season, they've got rid of all of them. Assault, Exceed, Joe Deceives, all will be released. There are 2 players on that organization still, and I'm guessing Marky B because they keep Marky B around. Mayhem is released, and I believe even Sender gave him a big vouch. And also Chits has as their analyst getting released now, so wishing the best all for those guys. But I think it's interesting, right, that Arcetes and Spart, those are the 2 guys. Feel bad for Assault in a way, because I actually think he was better than Arcetes this year, but it's just the fact that Los Angeles Guerrillas gave both Arcetes and Spart these ridiculous 2+1 year deals at the start of last season. And they've decided actually not to buy those contracts out and say, you know what, let's just start from scratch here. But instead, they're continuing on with those guys. So Spart is still getting paid on this team. I'm guessing he's going to be a bench player again, because the rumor has it that it's going to be Arcetes Illy +2, and Spart's kind of a flex. So I'm not, you know, it just shows what that organization is doing, to be honest. It's an absolute shambles. But nonetheless, Arcetes, Spart, Marky B, they're still there. Everybody else is gone. Joe Deceives is a player as well that I thought was pretty impressive actually towards especially the end of this season. I think he's a player that other teams should look at. I thought they might look to keep him around, but they'll probably release him, sign him back after a few months. That might be what they plan to do. Let's talk then about all of the information we got last night. So Crone actually got this confirmed by the league because all the teams, and I imagine some of the teams made their decisions here very last minute, because teams like Optic, they had Hook and Ghosty. Those graphics were prepared. They were ready to announce it pretty much as soon as they, you know, as soon as the deadline was over, they had announcements ready. So they'd clearly decided a few days before that was what they were going to do. Teams like FaZe, we haven't haven't seen anything from them yet, from Slasher, from FaZe themselves, from any of the FaZe players about the Slasher situation, but they have not extended his contract, which makes it seem to me that they've made this call potentially very last minute, right up until the deadline. So, and there's actually incredibly few teams that have extended anyone. Most of the players here that are still contracted are contracted because they were already re-signing new deals, or they were on 2+1s with 2 years guaranteed. So Beans and Kremp, I believe, in that boat on the Boston Breach side. Florida, they did extend Vickles' contract. Los Angeles Gullers extended, well, they didn't extend our season spot, they were guaranteed a deal. Skies, Hydra, Wardy, their contracts lasted all that time anyway. Dashi, I think, signed a new deal. Shotzi's last year's deal, I'm guessing, covered this season as well. And then on Toronto, all these guys also had 2+1s. Now, this doesn't necessarily mean that some of these guys might not be there, right? Because, you know, Kalinic and Insight, the rumor has it that Toronto are looking to sell those guys if they can, and we'll discuss that with FaZe here in a second. But these are the, I mean, there's very few contracts that have been extended. Most teams, if they had an option to extend, they've just dropped all their players, which maybe isn't a surprise, but there's certainly less extensions than I thought there would be. The only extensions we really have actually are on the Atlanta FaZe side, and we'll see that in a second because plenty of teams missing from this. Some of these teams, of course, Thieves, Vegas, Surge, you know, Ravens, they're just going to release all their guys, or they don't even have the option because Thieves, Vegas, Surge, for example, all of those guys were going to be unrestricted anyway because their contracts are at an end. We didn't have FaZe though, but then I believe they then replied to Crone again in the email they sent him and said, oh yeah, we forgot about FaZe. Here we go, here are FaZe's ones, just added them. Cellium, Simp, Abizi option extended, but no Slasher to be found, which pretty much aligns with what we've seen from other sources, where Jacob L says his understanding is, and nobody really who's leaked anything has been wrong so far in this period to be fair, that Slasher is an unrestricted free agent. They've decided not to extend his contract, and therefore it's the trio of FaZe looking for a new fourth on their roster. This, you know, I wouldn't say it's harsh on Slasher in some respect, because I'm sure he came into this team knowing that they had to win probably more than one event to keep him around. Okay, they won that one event, they became the best search and destroy team of all time. They still had problems at the end of the season, they couldn't quite get everything going, and maybe there's an argument to say that if Simp was slightly better at this year's title than maybe he has been on average, you know, in the last few years, if he was like as good as he has been typically, then maybe they'd have been even better this year. And I do think honestly that this year's FaZe team was better than last year's FaZe team. There was just better competition this year. Toronto are very good, Subliners are really good, Optic are really good at a time, Thieves, of course, they're the world champions. Like, I think this year's competition was very high, and last year where they got all those seconds, there wasn't really many other good teams. They just kept bottling it in the finals. So we haven't seen anything from Slasher yet, apart from this tweet that he did the other day. So I'm guessing this is going to be confirmed probably today, that FaZe and Slasher are going to say, yeah, I'm a UFA now, and I'm looking for new opportunities. And I also think it's kind of good for FaZe to just release Slasher, because if they don't want to keep him around, then don't extend him and then force someone to pay a buyout for him, right? Because that's just reducing his options next year. So I think it's better for Slasher and for FaZe just to part ways. But they've obviously made the call. What was, I imagine, a pretty difficult decision, because they didn't make this quickly. It was discussed briefly after Champs, they were looking for an upgrade, but it seems like they've made this decision kind of last minute to not extend Slasher and try and find a better alternative. Now, what better alternative is that going to be? This is where we get to this tweet from Pred. What does it mean? I think, honestly, he's just kind of doing some impression farming here, because I'm pretty sure this guy's been in Miami, then I think he was flying into New York. I actually have Instagram now, so I can follow these guys' stories, so I can see what they're up to, rather than people just DMing me them all the time on Twitter, and then I can see what the players are doing. But I think Pred is just, he's just enjoying life at the moment, and I'm sure he's having conversations on the side, though. Is he saying, oh, you know, Optic is sleeping on me, or is he, like, sleeping on that bag because he signed the contract? Like, who knows? But Pred will be a consideration for FaZe. My question for FaZe is, do they want to go down another carousel cycle of bringing in another main AR to the team and hoping it works? Because last year, there were two players they were linked to. One of them was Insight from Toronto. I'm pretty sure they wanted Insight as an option before Slasher, but last year, Insight was not available. Toronto wouldn't sell him. This year, they probably will. Now, I genuinely, this is my perspective, if you're a fan of a team that isn't FaZe, you should probably want them to do this, because I'm not convinced at all that bringing in another main AR, especially Insight, right? He's a good AR, but he is a snail, let's be honest. And putting him alongside Cellium, like, are you really going to get the respawn prowess there that you're necessarily looking for? I'm not so convinced. I think that's a lateral move, if anything. It might even be a slight regression. Maybe I'll mince my words on this, and with Insight, they'll be absolutely dominant next year. But I'm not sure that solves their issues necessarily. But also, the other name I mentioned was last year they wanted Shotzi, but then Scump decided to not retire, as he was going to, Shotzzy therefore stayed with Optic, and they were stuck with looking for AR options. They eventually got Slasher. I genuinely believe that what FaZe have got to consider doing is bringing Cellium to the full-time main. Cell's got to be the main, as far as I'm concerned. He's a slow AR. It's like Dashy on Optic. Dashy is pretty fast, but it just works better Optic when Dashy is the main AR. There's no other complications. There's not formal there, and you've got to think about, oh, who's the AR, who's the flex. Dashy should be the main, just like Cellium should be the main, as far as I'm concerned. Maybe they could work together. I know they probably want to team together at some point, but I prefer Cell to be a main, personally. And therefore, you need an option in the flex position, or you need to bring someone else to the flex position. Now, I know people are talking about Ghosty, and genuinely, I think Ghosty could add a lot of value to the FaZe team and, well, fix some of the issues that they've had. Fundamentally, though, are FaZe an organization that's going to look at Optic, see them drop a player that clearly Optic don't think is going to be good enough for them, and bring him into FaZe? I doubt it. I don't think FaZe are going to operate like that. I think FaZe are going to look to bring in someone of theoretically higher stature, so I'm not sure Ghosty's going to go there. I think if they're going to get an option, it's going to be Drazah. Is that going to work with the BZ? I'm not so convinced. Is, you know, maybe Scrappy, right? Could they get him off Toronto? Maybe. The other key option, though, that people have been mentioning is it about time that Simp goes to the flex? And I have said for a couple of years now, I like the idea of this. I mean, I used to watch Simp when he played Black Ops 3, and he was the best AR player that I didn't know he was an SMG, to be honest. I don't even know if he was back then, because this guy with the HVK, with the M8, he had the straightest shot I've ever seen in my life. And he was only like 15 years old playing Black Ops 3 Charles at the time. So, look, Simp to the flex, he would be ridiculously good in that role, I think, the same way that I think Scump would be if he got the opportunity to do it right over the last couple of years. And my opinion is that FaZe have to realize that just swapping out these ARs isn't going to solve some of the issues they've had in terms of consistency and just being the best team. And the scary thing, as far as I'm concerned, is that they might look at Pred. If they look at Pred and they get Pred and it becomes a BZ Pred, Simp as the flex, Cell as the main. And okay, they might have some issues there. But fundamentally, if that team works, that team wins like 4 of the 6 events next season. Like, that team is insanely good on paper. And just to add something to that, we actually have Scump last night who basically said, yeah, there's going to be some super teams this year, as in people are going to be stacking a lot of talent. And I think this is the concern for Optic. Like, if Pred wants to go to Optic, and that is his #1 choice, and if Optic decide to get Envoy instead, and Pred joins FaZe with Simp to the flex or whatever, and you guys might not think that's going to work, and maybe there's reasons why it wouldn't, but I think that it's worth a go for FaZe to actually try and switch up their philosophy here to some degree, and that just sounds scary as far as I'm concerned. Couple of things on Optic here before we close out the video. So of course they released Ghosty yesterday. There was this clip that emerged last night on TJ Halley's stream where Dashy's on a call and there's some music playing in the background, and the original playthrough you can't hear really anything, but some excellent Redditors as usual went through the detail and tried to remove all the music, and this is the amount of audio that's left. There's not much to it, but it sounds like he might be saying at Drazah's.
Whoa. Whoa.
I just saw something interesting. What if Dan goes to Toronto with Scrap? I could see that happening.
I don't
let Dan be like the main AR, let Scrap be that flex, and Dan's on the back lines commanding. I could see it, perhaps.
Scrappy just said in my chat, yeah, I'm fucking good. All right.
All right, well, that's not happening anymore. Thank you, Ernie.
Thank you, Scrappy.
Thank you for the insight. No pun intended, of course.
Jamie.
Sure.
So I don't know what you guys think about that, right? Whether there's anything in that, or whether he is saying like at Drazah's in like at Drazah's house, or I don't know. But it sounded like the word Draz at least was kind of in there. Maybe we're just making things up in our minds as humans and trying to find patterns. But possibly Dashy was mentioning Draz on the phone, which might be a thing. Also, speaking of the Optic situation, Ghosty is going to go somewhere, and there has been the talk about whether he could go to a team like Toronto. That was a question that was raised here by Methods and Scum, and Scrappy made it very clear in the replies that he's not a fan of that. So it's pretty interesting. Like, is that Scrappy doesn't think Ghosty's that good? Is that that Scrappy just, you know, has a massive ego, doesn't want to play with Ghosty? Like, I don't really know. But still, there's obviously a reason why he doesn't want to play with Ghosty, and we'll see where Ghosty ends up landing. There was also this that was noted as well, that Hook followed Repin, one of the head guys over at Version 1 and Rocker. So that's a possibility there, at least to look at. The teams are going to look at their options, aren't they? Let's be honest. And so most certainly are the players. But that is where we're going to leave it for today. Very much enjoyed to hear your thoughts in the comment section below. Hit the like button if you enjoyed. Subscribe if you're new. Take care. And I'll see you next time.